I want you to imagine, just for a second, a scenario where you are suddenly put on trial for your life.
Which is a terrifying thought right out of the gate.
Right, but you aren't standing in front of a magistrate because of a crime you actually committed. You haven't stolen property, you haven't hurt anyone, you haven't, conspired against the state.
You're just living your life.
Exactly. You are on trial simply because of a label, just a name you identify with. There is literally no evidence presented against you, no investigation into your character, just a deadly rumor attached to the underground group you happen to belong to.
And for the early Christians living under the shadow of the Roman Empire, that terrifying thought experiment was just everyday reality. I mean, they were a heavily persecuted minority, constantly looking over their shoulders.
Which perfectly brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring a single foundational document from the 2nd century. It's called The First Apology by Justin Martyr.
And we should note we're using the translation by Marcus Godds and George Reith, presented by Roman Roads Media.
Yes, thank you. So our goal today is to uncover exactly how a 2nd century philosopher defended this totally underground movement to the most powerful man on earth. Justin directs this text straight at the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius, his sons, and the entire Roman Senate.
It's an incredibly bold move.
Extremely bold. But before we go further, though, we should clarify the title for anyone who hasn't read it, because, Justin isn't saying, "I'm sorry" to the emperor.
Oh, far from it. In ancient Greek, an apologia is a formal, robust legal defense. It is a structured justification of one's actions or beliefs. Justin isn't begging for a pardon here. He is essentially taking the stand.
He's going on the offensive.
Right. And what we have to understand about the historical backdrop of this era is that Rome was drowning in intense information overload, political posturing, and deep-seated superstition. So this document is an absolute masterclass in critical thinking, where Justin demands rational justice and holds a highly uncomfortable mirror up to the Roman Empire.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the core legal argument Justin makes right out of the gate is brilliant. He points out a glaring hypocrisy in the Roman justice system.
The procedural quirk.
Yes. His primary grievance is that Christians are being dragged into the streets and executed solely for the name Christian. And the wildest part of the source material is that if a person simply verbally denies the name, if they just say, "Nope, not a Christian," they are completely acquitted and sent home.
That procedural quirk completely exposes the logical flaw in the state's approach. Justin argues that a functional justice system shouldn't punish a name. It must punish actions.
Right, actual crimes.
Exactly. If someone who identifies as a Christian commits an actual crime, like theft or treason, Justin says the state should absolutely punish them for that crime.
But if they are innocent of any wrongdoing, the state is essentially executing people over a word.
It's the equivalent of putting someone in a maximum security prison simply because they call themselves a plumber, without ever checking to see if they actually broke a pipe. What's fascinating here is Justin's rhetorical strategy. He refuses to approach the emperor as a groveling subject. Instead, he challenges Antoninus Pius using the emperor's own official titles.
Oh, I love this part.
It's so clever. Antoninus was famously known across the empire as pious and a philosopher. So Justin dares him to actually live up to those names. He tells the emperor that a true guardian of justice, a genuine lover of learning, does not yield to irrational impulse or evil rumors. A true philosopher acts based solely on the truth.
He is effectively telling the most powerful man in the world, don't judge a book by its title, and don't let the unthinking mob dictate your laws.
And I would ask you, the listener, to consider how often that exact dynamic plays out today.
Yeah.
How often are people still judged entirely by the labels society places on them, rather than by their actual character or their concrete actions?
Yeah, it's a timeless issue.
Justin was fighting a fundamental human tendency to categorize and condemn, which is just as prevalent now as it was in the 2nd century.
So Justin is defending them against these wild societal rumors. But looking at the source material, one of the most surprising facts is the specific charge the Romans levied against them. The Romans officially labeled these early Christians as atheists.
It sounds completely counterintuitive to a modern ear, considering Christianity is one of the largest religions in the world.
Right, how could they be atheists?
Well, in the context of the Roman Empire, religion wasn't just a private spiritual belief. It was the civic glue that held the entire state together. The Romans had a massive pantheon of gods, and participating in the public sacrifices was viewed as your patriotic duty.
So it was inherently political.
Yes, Because Christians absolutely refused to participate in these rituals, they were labeled atheists. They were seen as antisocial threats to the cosmic order.
Justin doesn't just defend the Christians against this, though. He goes on the offensive with this incredibly witty, sarcastic takedown of Roman idol worship. I noticed in the text he brings up the actual craftsmen making these statues.
The sculptors and metalworkers.
Right. He points out how absurd it is that corrupt, intemperate men take everyday materials to forge a god. He even notes they use vessels of dishonor.
Which is quite the phrase.
It is. It's essentially a polite second-century way of saying they take a dirty chamber pot, hammer it into a new shape, and suddenly everyone is supposed to bow down to it.
He pulls no punches. And he takes that absurdity a step further by highlighting the completely arbitrary nature of local pagan religions. Justin points out to the emperor that depending on where you travel within the empire, the theological rules completely change.
It's totally regional.
Exactly. In one region, the locals are worshiping trees and rivers. You cross a border, and suddenly the local deities are mice or cats or crocodiles.
Wait, crocodiles?
Crocodiles.
And if you refuse to worship their specific regional crocodile, you are deemed a heretic and an outcast.
It really highlights how chaotic the Roman religious landscape actually was, but Justin has to offer an alternative, right? I mean, he can't just mock the crocodiles and leave it at that. No, he provides a very robust theological counterargument. He concedes a point to make a point. He says, we are atheists if you mean we reject these man-made statues and regional animals. But we are certainly not atheists regarding the true creator.
Right.
He explains that Christians worships the Father of righteousness, his Son, and the prophetic spirit. Then he drops an absolute bombshell on the Roman worldview. He argues that the pagan gods aren't just empty statues or harmless myths. He claims they're actually evil demons masquerading as deities.
That is a massive escalation.
It is a total reframing of their reality. According to Justin, these demons demand sacrifices, they corrupt human behavior, and most importantly for his legal defense, these demons are the unseen forces stirring up all this irrational hatred and violence against the Christians.
So what does this all mean for the Roman state? Because Antoninus Pius is running a massive, sprawling empire. He might find a philosophical debate interesting, but at the end of the day, his primary concern is keeping the empire from fracturing.
He needs public order.
Right. He needs to know if these underground, demon-accusing Christians are a threat to public order.
Justin anticipates that exact pragmatic concern. He flips the script entirely, arguing that Christians are actually the emperor's absolute best allies for maintaining peace. To understand this, you have to think about the limitations of the Roman justice system. The emperor and his city guards can only punish the crimes they actually witness or uncover.
The entire system relies on external enforcement.
Right.
Meaning the system implicitly incentivizes not getting caught. If you can hide your crime from the Roman guards, you suffer no penalty.
Precisely the flaw Justin targets. He points out that Christians operate under a completely different paradigm. They believe in a God who sees absolutely everything, not just actions committed in the dark, but very private, internal thought.
Which you can't hide from.
You can't. Furthermore, they believe this all-seeing creator punishes unrepentant evil with eternal fire. That deeply held belief creates an internal deterrent that no Roman law and no amount of city guards could ever possibly match. Justin argues this makes them the ultimate model citizens because they are policing their own morality from the inside out.
He backs this up by quoting specific moral codes straight from the teachings of Jesus. He reminds the Roman emperor that Jesus explicitly taught his followers to pay their taxes, famously saying, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's."
A very smart detail to include for an emperor.
Definitely. He also points out that Jesus commanded them to love their enemies, to pray for the people actively persecuting them, and to voluntarily share their wealth with the needy.
To really drive that moral contrast home, Justin targets a deeply ingrained Roman cultural practice, the custom of exposing infants.
That part of the text is incredibly stark. It's a heavy detail that really lingers with you.
It is. In the ancient Roman world, the paterfamilias, the male head of the household, had absolute legal power. If a family had an unwanted baby, perhaps because of poverty or simply because it was a girl, it was completely legal and socially acceptable to expose the infant.
Just abandon them.
They would just abandon the newborn outside in the elements to die. Justin declares to the Senate that Christians categorically refuse to participate in this practice. He argues that leaving a child to die makes the parents murderers, but he also exposes a much darker reality of the Roman system.
Yeah, he points out that many of those abandoned babies didn't actually die of exposure.
No, they were often picked up by opportunists, raised in captivity, and then forced into the horrific Roman prostitution industry. Justin uses this gruesome, accepted societal norm to draw a massive moral line in the sand.
He is proving the profound, tangible virtue of the Christian lifestyle by contrasting it directly against the accepted behaviors of the Roman elite. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Justin knows he is navigating a cultural minefield. He's talking to an audience steeped entirely in Greek and Roman mythology.
They live and breathe these stories.
Right. And instead of alienating them completely, he uses their own mythological framework as a bridge. Reading through the text, the comparisons he draws are wild. He tells the emperor, "You Romans believe Jupiter has sons. Well, we believe God has a son."
A direct parallel.
He goes on, "You believe the hero Bellerophon rode the winged horse Pegasus up to heaven. Or that Perseus was miraculously born of a virgin. Or that Asclepius was a great physician who healed the sick and then ascended. We believe Jesus actually did these things."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at why Justin thinks these cultural similarities exist in the first place, because he certainly isn't arguing that Christianity is just another myth to add to the pile.
No, he takes it in a completely different direction.
He leans back into that demon theology we discussed earlier. Justin claims that those evil demons actively listened to the ancient Hebrew prophets centuries before Christ. They heard the prophecies about the coming Messiah, but because they lacked divine wisdom, they didn't fully understand them.
So they panicked and made up their own versions?
Essentially, yes. Justin argues the demons created the Greek myths as cheap, confusing imitations of the truth. It was a preemptive strike of disinformation to lead people astray before Jesus even arrived on the scene.
Retroactive plagiarism by demons.
That is a great way to put it. He even goes so far as to claim that Plato, one of the most revered Greek philosophers, borrowed his foundational ideas about the creation of the world directly from the ancient writings of Moses.
That is an incredibly bold claim to make to a Roman philosopher. And he doesn't stop with ancient texts. Justin takes this idea of Christian truth being embedded in the world and points out a mind-blowing visual analogy.
Oh, the shapes.
Yes, he tells the Romans to literally just look around them. He argues that the shape of the cross is baked into nature and Roman society.
The symbology argument. It's a fascinating look at how early Christians viewed the concept of the logos, or divine reason, organizing the universe.
He tells them to look at a ship sailing across the Mediterranean. The mast and the horizontal yardarm holding the sail form a cross. He says you can't navigate the seas without it. He points to the shape of a plow used to farm the earth, or the tools used by their mechanics.
It's everywhere once you look for it.
He even tells them to look at the structure of the human face. The way the nose sits vertically against the brow forms a cross. And perhaps most daringly, he points out the very standard of the Roman military banners.
The vexillum.
Right. The symbols of their empire's sprawling military power are shaped exactly like crosses. He's telling the emperor that the Romans are utilizing the symbol of the very Christ they are actively persecuting every single day without even realizing it.
It is a stunning visual and philosophical argument. He is trying to show Antoninus Pius that Christianity is not a foreign anomaly, but rather the fulfillment of the underlying reason, the logos, that already governs the world.
But of course, pointing out mythological similarities and the shape of a plow isn't enough to secure a legal acquittal.
No, you need more than that in a court of law.
The emperor needs actual proof that Justin's version of history is the objective truth.
And Justin attempts to provide that objective proof through the ancient Hebrew prophecies. He argues that prophets like Moses, Isaiah, and David predicted the specific granular details of Jesus' life thousands of years in advance.
He lists them out quite specifically.
Very specifically. He points to ancient texts predicting the virgin birth, Jesus riding on a foal into Jerusalem, the specific piercing of his hands and feet on the cross, and even the future destruction of Jerusalem by the Roman armies.
Which had just recently happened from Justin's perspective.
Right. Justin's argument is that no human could guess these events with such accuracy. It has to be divine foresight. This raises an important question, though, and it's a massive philosophical dilemma that Justin tackles head-on. If absolutely everything about Jesus' life and the actions of the people who persecuted him was prophesied thousands of years in advance, is there actually any such thing as free will?
The classic debate of fate versus human agency. which would have been highly relevant to Antoninus Pius, wouldn't it?
Incredibly relevant.
Yeah.
Antoninus Pius was deeply influenced by Roman Stoicism, and a core tenet of Stoicism was a belief in determinism or fate, the idea that the universe unfolds according to a strict, predetermined script.
So if it was prophesied that the Romans would execute Jesus, a Stoic might argue the Romans were simply playing their assigned role in the cosmic play. They can't be blamed.
Precisely. Justin forcefully rejects this.
He draws a hard line against fatalism.
He argues passionately that prophecy does not equal fatalism. Justin insists that God simply foreknows the choices people will make using his divine omniscience, but humans must absolutely retain the free choice to do good or evil.
Because without choice, morality breaks down.
Exactly. He reasons that if humans lack free will, then virtue and vice are completely meaningless concepts. If we are just programmed machines acting out a script, then God's subsequent rewards and punishments would be fundamentally unjust. We have to be active moral agents.
And speaking of moral agency, Justin then pulls back the curtain on the actual choices Christians make in their private day-to-day lives. Because this was a heavily persecuted underground movement, the Roman rumor mill was working overtime.
The rumors were horrific.
Terrible accusations spreading about what Christians did behind closed doors, rumors of cannibalism, incest, and dark, seditious cult rituals. Justin realizes the only way to combat the darkness of a rumor is with total transparency.
He outlines their sacred rituals with incredible historic clarity. This text is actually one of the most important historical windows we have into early Christian worship.
He details baptism, which he refers to as illumination and the remission of sins, explaining the process of a person choosing to be born again in water. He describes the Eucharist, clarifying that they share bread and wine mixed with water.
And he emphasizes what they believe it is.
Yes, he makes sure to emphasize they don't treat it as common food, but believe it is the flesh and blood of Jesus. And then he describes their Sunday gatherings.
The structure of which sounds remarkably familiar even 2 millennia later.
They get together, they read the memoirs of the apostles or the writings of the prophets. The president of the assembly gives an instruction or a homily. And then, crucially for his defense to the state, they collect funds.
The charity aspect.
Right. Justin explicitly outlines where those funds go. The money is distributed directly to orphans, to widows, to people in prison, and to strangers in need. He is laying all their cards on the table for the emperor.
He's saying, this is our big, dark, underground secret.
We bathe in water, we share a sacred meal, and we take care of the poorest, most vulnerable people in your society.
It's a highly effective way to demystify the movement. He systematically replaces the terrifying rumors with a portrait of inherent quiet goodness. And to really cement his legal defense, Justin doesn't just rely on his own eloquent arguments. He brings receipts.
He actually attaches appendices to his apology. He includes formal letters from previous Roman emperors to back up his case.
He wants to show Antoninus Pius that his own revered predecessors had occasionally recognized the injustice of blind, mob-driven persecution. Now, as a quick historical footnote for you listening, the most famous of these letters, attributed to Emperor Marcus Aurelius, was actually appended to later copies of Justin's apology by subsequent generations to strengthen the document's legacy.
But it fits perfectly with his argument.
It does. Its inclusion in the text serves the exact same rhetorical purpose, showing that even the greatest Roman minds recognize the supernatural weight of this movement.
And the story contained in that letter is like something out of a cinematic epic. It recounts a literal miracle in Germany. According to the document, Marcus Aurelius is writing to the Senate about a campaign where his army was completely trapped deep in enemy territory.
Surrounded by a massive host of enemies.
And the crucial detail is that the Roman legion had been entirely without water for 5 days.
A completely desperate, mathematically hopeless situation for a military commander. Thirst would destroy the legion before a single sword was swung.
But the letter states that the Christian soldiers embedded within his ranks didn't draw their weapons in despair. Instead, they fell to the ground right there on the battlefield and prayed to their God.
And what happens next is wild.
The letter claims that almost immediately, an incredibly refreshing, life-saving rain fell directly on the Roman troops. Meanwhile, at the exact same time, a withering, destructive hail struck the enemy forces, breaking their line.
The way the letter frames the event, the emperor was deeply unnerved by this display of power. He basically advises the Senate, we need to pardon the Christians immediately, lest they decide to use this devastating weapon of prayer against the empire itself.
It's a fascinating historical flex. Please do not let these people pray against us.
It really is. And as we absorb all these different layers, the philosophical arguments, the moral defenses, the mythological bridges. I really want you to consider the immense, staggering courage it took for Justin to write and deliver this document.
It's hard to overstate.
He is a prominent member of an underground, violently hated minority. He is sending this text directly to the autocrat who possesses the unilateral power to execute him with a single gesture.
One word and he's gone.
And yet, he meticulously lays out his deepest beliefs. He exposes the logical hypocrisy of the state. He demands a fair trial based on evidence. And he does it all knowing it could very well cost him his life.
Which, as history tells us, it eventually did. That supreme sacrifice is exactly why he is remembered today as Justin Martyr.
His legacy is sealed in that name.
But this document, this first apology, remains a monumental achievement. It's a dense blend of legal defense, high-level philosophical reasoning, and cultural bridge building. It stands as a profound testament to the power of rational discourse and unwavering conviction in the face of violent, unthinking prejudice.
It truly does. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought pulled straight from the text for you to mull over.
Lay it on us.
It's found in chapter 57, and it is perhaps Justin's most brilliant psychological maneuver in the entire apology. He looks at the Roman emperor and essentially states, "The ultimate punishment you wield in your vast empire is the threat of death."
The ultimate deterrent.
Right. But that threat doesn't scare us in the slightest. In fact, Justin argues that if the Romans execute them, the Romans are actually acting as their benefactors.
That is a staggering way to frame an execution.
It completely upends the power dynamic. Justin reasons that by killing them, the Romans are simply setting them free from the miseries and necessities of this corrupted earthly life, allowing them to transition instantly to live eternally with their Creator.
Wow.
So the ultimate weapon of the state, the primal fear of death, is completely neutralized. I want you to really think about that. What happens to a massive worldly power structure when the very people they are trying to oppress and control no longer have any fear whatsoever of the ultimate penalty?
It renders the oppressor completely powerless. It's a paradigm-shifting thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Justin Martyr's first apology. It's a complex, challenging source, but an incredibly rewarding one. Keep asking tough questions, keep looking past the societal labels, and keep seeking out the truth, no matter how deep the sources may be. We'll catch you next time.